So I've got a new book of poems. It's called The Motel Entropy and Other Sorrows. Let's start with, I'm going to start with a poem called Butterfly Effect. I hail from a dozen hailstorms, said the sailboat, to the pyramid suffering a heat stroke, in whose shadow stood the disciple about to shovel a fistful of locusts into his Wookiee mouth, just as the elephant decided to rear up and stomp his trainer like a field mouse before rows of spectators, while high above in the marbled clouds, the pilot announced the fuselage was undergoing a crisis of identity and had sprouted feathers, and so a crash landing in the Aral Sea was imminent, except there was no water there on account of the Soviets rerouting the river flow to grow cotton, which gives dry law a whole new meaning. This led the Goldman Sachs banker of porcine bearing on that flight to clip one last fat torpedo while shuffling the numbers of a dozen portfolios with holdings as toxic as Fukushima, with the mystic reverence of a boy about to deliver the longest turd in history. The butterfly never knew what hit it when the net was cast and the pin impaled it, just as the disco ball started spinning and new constellations sparked into existence. So the second one's entitled The Lovers, and it's after this painting, The Lovers by Magritte, René Magritte, the Belgian painter. The Lovers. They kiss under a shroud to summon rain, water the last element his mother knew, before being pulled from the river lifeless. Her body covered in the same shroud the lovers now share. Every kiss is a veiled death, a cloud chamber where charged particles escape, collide, and deflect across gaseous skies. His sober black suit a counterpart to her sleeveless orange dress, a soft seduction of spring and fall. Two seasons dressed in the intimacy of unrest, holding on to each other like oracles under Lintel's tentative shield, yielding to nothing but the coming storm. This one's called Sea Monkeys. You know what sea monkeys are? Well, if it doesn't gel, it is an aspect, and this isn't gelling, from the movie Psycho. Brine shrimp spawn a galaxy in a fishbowl. Ergo, sea monkeys exist. So do Higgs bosons and Demodex. These last look like scorpions and live on the canopy of your eyelashes. The difference being they're not sold at toy stores as a novelty item. PETA has so far remained notoriously mum about sea monkeys. Long before that Nazi-sympathizing corporalite von Braunhut patented his Presto shrimp aquariums in the late 60s, Kubla Khan's gift to Marco Polo when they first met was a porcelain bowl of sea monkeys swimming in unfettered motility. Michelangelo sculpted a frieze of sea monkeys once. It's now in one of the 9 circles of the Vatican, next to Pope John's Feldo. Lao Tse was fond of traveling with an entourage of sea monkeys wherever the wind carried him. This led Confucius to think him a mad poet beyond his time. It is a well-known fact how highly Jesus thought of sea monkeys. This explains their fluency in Aramaic. Sea monkeys, like leafhoppers and earwigs, could desperately use a rebranding. According to Pliny, you'd be hard-pressed to find creatures more congenial than sea monkeys. In this sense, they fall under the same category of barnacles, bonobos, and Wallace Shawn. I'd wager anything my dinner with Andre would have scored a spanking 10 on IMDb if only sea monkeys were in the cast. There's a UPS package that arrived from Omaha yesterday from an unknown sender. I fear the worst. I'll say it once more with bated breath. Sea monkeys exist. This next one's Angelus. On a Friday, 4:15, the ventilator was taken out. Morphine to ferry the little boy past the pain. Last gasp started shortly after. Departure resembles its coming back. Parents, 2 lives husked by grief. Outside the window, 4 stories down, a man walked his dog. Traffic beetled its course. Daylight fainted, permissive, got ready for the weekend. At 5, little Edgar died. The nurse's voice soft as nails. His tiny handprints and black ink still climbing the walls. Here, the Minotaur woke up bewildered in his labyrinth. Fragments of the Internationale were still playing in the speakers. The map is never the territory of our wandering. He found a bright orange string leading down the dirt path. This led him to an atrium where a film was being projected. Somewhere the faint embers of a sunset, a truce of weather in the Alps, sun motes descending a long spiral staircase, scenes from a life he'd once known, before the great wars, before the famine, before slaying so many. He continued following the orange string straight out of his stone prison. Outside, the world was green and densely populated by towering trees. He heard what could only be a recording of birdsong in late summer. This last one's title homing, and it's in 3 parts. So I'll start 1. Sea was the land's echo, the wind cried out, a liquid fulmination casting arteries of light against the hulls of vessels in the shipyard. Dry dock is how steel gets schooled in the rust song of exile. Foghorns croon in rehearsal against the cobalt noon. Cormorants dip in slick loops below the cellophane surface, their mimicry of question marks punctuating the whitecaps. Machinery guts the earth in thunderous repose to the crowbar gulls held hostage by spiraling thermals. 10 feet away stands a man who could easily be my double in stunt or life if 20 years ago he'd been standing in front of the placid Atlantic instead of the raging Pacific. And I'm put in mind of that story by Borges, whose premise echoes this moment but is set in Geneva, and whose title, like so much else in my newly minted 40s, has slipped down the hatch of oblivion. A plane with contrails masters the cloudless heavens, in fevered search of another sky. 2. Houseboats moored along the pier remind how home is ever a-drifting in place. We are traces, turns of breath, a syntactical fluidity of the eye where the water woos. Mitosis is being at home where we're most divided. Outlines dissolve in parallax refraction, continents of light, the myth of place, conjecture of sound. Echolocate the wind. From the feathered aerialist, beyond the spindrift. This bridge drawn over the dark waters, where the nimbus dusk drowns its burning sentinels, wayward stars. And 3. Light escorts the shimmering gaze of reflection. In feathered wake, concentrics dissolve, gliding seagulls across mosaic clouds. The river's quicksilver inversions of houseboats, sailboats, and bridges grasp filaments of their solid equivalents, mass zigging like polygraph needles in the watery scroll. This sinking feeling, once intimate as breath, where gravity spurns the wing, a new buoyancy finds kinship in the yawning sky.